Yo, g'day guys, Brisbane brothers here, Aussie.
And Dan's.
We've got some loud magpies in the background, you'll have to bear with there guys. Got a cool one today, how to do lash on a solid roller cam. So you might have seen on our other videos, we've shown how to adjust your rockers with a hydraulic camshaft with preload. What we're doing here is solid roller adjustment. So lash means there's actually going to be a bit of clearance between that roller and the tip. We'll get into it now guys. This is a really nice engine here we're working on today. Make sure you smash a like and subscribe. Check out our other videos. Let's get into it. Alright guys, so this is all you really need. Feeler gauge. This one's very tight, 14 thou lash. Normally with a solid cam they're around sort of 22, 24. The tighter you go, the more power, the more RPM. This is a really crazy engine here. It's about 700 horsepower and pretty cranky thing. So it's nice and tight, 14 thou. You'll need a 732 Allen key to do the adjustment on the grub screw on a 716 poly lock. These particular rockers have a girdle. Makes it a touch more difficult, but they're a good peace of mind when you clamp them together. These can't rotate and turn. You don't have to lock the poly lock up as much. How we show in our other video, we use the rubber mallet to lock them. Here you kind of set them, give them a bit of a hand torque, about 15 foot-pounds, and then when you clamp this in, they go nowhere. Alright, we'll get into it. This little guy here.
This one, bro?
Well, very special story with that one. Over the back here guys with the manual sleeve cylinder. Lucky the customer had one Allen key floating around. We've got that one there. We're going to add it to our kit. Little shortened one to get in under there to set that back one. Voila. Alright guys, so when you go and put your girdle on,
So the 2N one to the locator should just pop straight off like that.
easy, no fighting it. And to get it on, little bit of muscle, straight down, straight on the rings, beautiful. Right, let's get these 6 in. We've swapped over roller lifters here. They need to be periodically checked, every sort of 2,500 miles. The old lifters are just starting to show a few signs of wear, getting a bit loose. So we've chucked another set in here today. And when you're swapping over things like that, you want to be mindful of your lifter seat cup height. The new lifter was a little bit higher. It only looked about 50 thousandths. Some of them can be out by quite a bit. If it's too far out, it can throw out the pushrod geometry. So you've got to have a bit of a check. Come along and have a look. Make sure that it doesn't move the roller tip too outboard on the valve. So we're just going to get all of those wound down to roughly near 0. Then Danzy's going to get on the Harmo here with a 15-16 socket and a little extension and turn it over, and we're going to use the E-oik method. We're going to set the intake valve when the exhaust valve's opening, and we're going to set the exhaust valve when the intake valve is opened and it's back starting to close back on the seat. If you do that adjustment, whether you've got a solid cam, hydraulic cam, 6-cylinder, Cleveland, Windsor, doesn't matter. That's the safest way to make sure that you're on the base of the lobe.
Unfortunately,
those birds are so noisy.
Someone's pulled this girdle off before we got to the engine, so if they didn't already force it off, the canted studs, we wouldn't have issues. You'll be able to just nicely finger start these, but if you don't, if you force it off guys, you will bend it, and then every time you work with it, you'll have issue, you won't be able to nicely look. I can't
they should just turn through by finger.
Start, so it's just made it a little bit annoying, but just gotta be patient guys, you don't want to wreck the threads.
Alright guys, so when you're winding these down by finger, because this cam's got a lot of lift, this rocker here is up, so it's up, it's on the lobe, so you just leave that one there and we'll come back and set it later. My little tip is to have some sort of a, like this is a China graph pencil, but like a paint pen, whiteboard marker, whiteout paint, something, so you can mark your rockers as you've set them, so nothing gets missed. If you can see, I've done a little mark here on all of these as we've gone through and set them. We're trying to smash this job out today. It's actually the weekend and it's really fucking hot today too, but then I thought, look, we'll get a quick scene, get a video. Hope you guys appreciate it. Anyway, we've got this one down now. We're going to start, Dan's is going to start turning that harmonic balancer around. We're going to do the E-oik method. set the intake valve when the exhaust is opening, and set the, so here I can see an exhaust valve opening here straight away. Go a little bit more. Oh no, it's just gone to a seat. Okay, so that's an intake here opening, guys. When this intake starts to close, okay, that's closing. So this exhaust valve is on its base part of the load, because it's very important with a solid roller. It has to be spot on. With a hydraulic cam you can be a bit out, it doesn't matter. With this stuff, if it's 14th thou, it has to be 14th thou, and you need to have the same feeling with the feeler gauge when you're slipping it in on every one when it's adjusted. If it's a bit tight or a bit too loose, you've got to go back and do it again. Some of times you've got to do one 2 or 3 times to get it right, but you want a uniform feeling on the feeler gauge. So this one, as we mentioned, is 14th thou. It's nice and tight. If you want to grab that, we've got our 732 spanner, 732 Allen key, 916 spanner for this particular girdle. Normally it would be 732 and a 5/8 on a poly lock. These are a little bit smaller. So this intake valve has opened and it's closing. Oh sorry, I'll just stop and I'll just start again quickly before I get too far into this. We're using the EOIC method, which is exhaust opening, intake closing. So you set the intake valve when the exhaust is opening, and you set the exhaust valve when the intake is closing. So this intake's closing, we're setting this exhaust. This is 1 cylinder. Make sure you're on the right cylinder if you're doing this. With Windsors, because everything's in line, it's very easy to get it mixed up. So the trick is look in the port, follow the port, and you can see your exhaust intake. Okay, let's get into it. 732, we're going to wind it down now and get our feeler gauge. Put our feeler gauge in between the tip with a straight line like that. Then I'll get my 5/8 up on top and I'll start cranking this down until I feel it start to bind on that. Until I feel it start to bind on that. It's just too loose for the okay, so that's starting to grab the feeler gauge there. Now that's a little bit loose. I'm gonna get it snug feeling in and out. Yep, like that. That feels good. So you don't want too much effort to push it in, you don't want too much effort to roll it out. So when you get that feeling, and this is about how I set the other 8, because the gauges are, you know, pretty cheap, throwaway sort of an item, when you're torquing them up you can't go too tight. So you don't want to, if you pull it out and you can't get it back in, it's definitely too tight. And if it's just going in and out like butter, it's too loose. So my little tip now that I do before I go and lock that down is I'll grab my push rod, move it up and down, then I'll hold my push rod down and I'll grab this rocker arm and I'll go to wiggle it up and down to feel that I've locked up the bottom of this poly lock on the top of the rocker, not the grub screw inside. So because we've gone to a different lifter that's a bit higher, the grub screws all needed to be backed out, not where they were. Normally you just turn them back 90, set them, turn them back 90. On this, because it's longer, we've had to back them right out. But you want to make sure that while you're doing this setting, that we're actually setting the poly lock on the top of the rocker and the slack only here at the valve tip, not the other way around. See, as soon as I go a bit tighter on there, it's too tight. So that feels a good feeling there, we'll leave that.
Another tip critical with solid, guys, the threads have to be spot on. You can get a false read if there's a damage on the thread as well. See, that's why that check, just make sure that you're actually
so now while I'm doing this grub screw up with the 732, I'm actually mindful holding this so that this doesn't turn, because we've got our correct adjustment here. So I'll chase this down to the bottom. I'll give it a slight nip, just the slightest little bit of a nip, because these don't need to be banged with a rubber mallet like we show in our other video, because these are going to grab them, stop them from turning. And once that's adjusted, you want to check this. See how that's a little bit loose?
It's changed a bit.
It's changed. That's buttery. That's not what we were going for. That's not how the other 8 are adjusted, so we're going to back that off and do it again. So the trick with this one, I already know, we're going to have to go a fair bit tighter on the
Alright, so we'll get this one a bit better. So
what?
crack the first thing you do, guys, re-crack the grub.
Okay, so we've cracked the grub back off. Now, where we were going in and out before, when we did that grub up, loosened it, so we're going to go tighter, like that. It's probably a bit too tight. Yep, like that. And we'll nip this back up again. Nip that, leave it there, and we'll just feel this. That's what we want.
Beautiful.
Uniform, not too hard in, not too hard out. Little bit of oil under helps too, guys.
Beautiful.
So now the adjustment's right. We're holding this here so it can't turn more. We're going to give this just a slighter snip, and then we're going to give this just a slighter snip here too. Just like that. You see that? It's like hardly anything.
Yeah. Just to make sure you're feeling that it's
Now
harder.
that grub screw is locked. That's in. We'll grab our feeler gauge, double check how it feels. Beautiful.
It's perfectly set.
Not too hard in, not too hard out. Perfect at 14.
Beautiful.
Now the last thing, so you don't fuck up, because this is a really nice, expensive engine, mark your rocker arm, put a bit of a paint mark, something on there. I can see it. These other ones are easy, where there's writing with like a chino, you just put a bit of a dot over the writing, so I could even just smear a bit into the 1.8 like that.
Beautiful.
Yeah, 1.8's not your normal ratio. They're normally 1.73 on a cleaver. That's part of the secret of this engine's.
Shh.
Part of the secret of this engine's power.
Yeah, no,
is
guys, this
extra
is a
lift.
very exciting engine. Very
Bit of
radical.
cranking. Okay,
Good
I'll
beast.
grab that.
That's how you do it. Alright,
You
so
spin
let's
it
do
around.
more.
We'll try and get to the next one. So you should set each cylinder, but if you mark it with something so you don't forget anything, you can watch here and you can shortcut. These outboard ones are all the exhaust. If any of these start opening, we can set an intake. See, this exhaust here is opening, guys. So we can set this intake valve here. So you can leave that there. I'll pass this back to you. Alrighty, grab this and this. Let's get in here. So this one's up high because it was on the cam lobe before. When we wound it down by finger, you don't want to go fighting it. So I'll just grab this gauge, slip it in the back here. And I'll creep this up until I feel that grab that gauge. Okay, so that's bitten the gauge there. Then I'll back it off a little bit, just a touch. A little bit more. Take that gauge out. And we'll come over here and we want to do those two checks. You want to feel your 0. A little bit tight. Back it off just a touch more. Okay, keep it at 0. Then you want to hold that rocker down. Hold that push rod down. Feel that the rocker. Yep, nice. I'll check this grub screw. Is it interfering? Yep, it's away. Okay, good. It's very important if that grub screw touches down on that rocker stud before this has touched that rocker arm, your adjustment's up the crap. You can be measuring it here and it can be all wrong. So that's right. Now we'll put our gauge back in. Leave her there. I'm going to crank this down till she bites it again. Yep, there. So now we're going to just get our nice feeling in and out. Nice feeling in and out like that. Let's give that the tiniest snip. We'll come along and grab the poly lock. Send that home. So the poly lock's just touching there. We'll give this a little nip. Give that a little nip there. Now check this.
Recheck it.
Little bit, just a touch loose. So I'll just give that a nip. Yep.
Beautiful.
Beautiful. Beautiful. That's it, guys. Yep, she's done.
It's critical that they all go in and out even when you're doing solid, because there's discrepancy, there's a bit of crush there. So you want them to be the same feeling of the feeler gauge. If you're going some loose, some are tight, you got to get them more consistent.
We did have something over here we noticed it's a bit funny, but I'm not very comfortable with. Normally when you're doing these adjustments, everything will end up being rather flush, like these outboard ones, see they're a touch higher, and these inboard ones, but see they've gone very low there, not so low there and there.
Not uniform.
Yeah, it's a bit funny. We checked it, and that's how it's ended up again. Maybe the girdle's got a slight bend to it, but you want, when you're setting rockers, you want your exhaust all uniform on the outside, all your intake on the inside all uniform. Alright guys, so once they've been adjusted successfully, you just come along and do up those 9/16s there, just to clamp those poly locks together so they can't turn themselves or back themselves off, and that's it. She'll be set for a little while, roughly sort of every 500 miles you want to do solid roller lifters, or it depends how hard you drive it. Some people aren't that hard on the gear and you can get away with 1500, 2000 miles. Alrighty, make sure you smash the like and subscribe guys. Thanks for watching that. Make sure you check out our other videos too. Phew.